ranchers who had sheep, and the coyotes would come out at night and kill the sheep and eat them, because that's what coyotes do. But the farmers didn't want to kill the coyotes because I guess they, they contribute to the ecosystem. They, they're good for nature, So they went to the psychologist and they said, what can you do for us so that we can save our sheep and also save the coyotes as well? We don't want to kill the coyotes. So what the psychologists did was they took lamb meat and they sprinkled it with lithium chloride. Now, lithium chloride will make an animal instantly throw up, but it doesn't harm them permanently. So you don't have to worry about them, being sick for a long time. So, and they videotaped this. So they show that, at nighttime, the coyotes come out of the woods and, they can smell lamb meat. Now, this lamb meat has the lithium chloride on it, right? It's all rolled up and chopped up, and it's all around where the sheep are. And so, well, there's their dinner right there, prepared for them already. So they eat that lamb meat with the lithium chloride on it, and they immediately get sick. So they turn around, run back into the woods. So now, what do you think happens the next night when they come out and they get a whiff of the sheep? Actually, on the video, it shows them like backing up, literally backing up. They can't even stand the smell of the sheep. So it's all good. The sheep get to live, the coyote gets to live, the ranchers got what they wanted, and it was a good use of a real simple classical conditioning to help everybody. Don't forget that it helps the animals as well as it helps the humans. Okay, let me just see, I don't want to go. Take a look on page 160. There's a picture of little Albert. Who was little Albert? That guy on the right-hand side of the picture is scaring little Albert with a clown mask. This is a very old experiment, okay? But Watson wanted to know if he could classically condition kids in a young child. So he picked a kid who was really young, well, I was like 7 months old. And what he did was he wanted a very young child because he didn't want any thinking involved. He didn't want the kid to be like planning or anticipating or anything. So he showed little Albert a mouse. So some of you already know this experiment, right? And little Albert liked the mouse because why wouldn't he? And so that was okay. Now this is Pavlov all over again, right? There are some things that humans are naturally afraid of, and one of them is loud, startling noises. So even if somebody knocked over the desk in bed, it would startle you. So that's a natural fear. So what Watson did was he showed little Albert the mouse, and every time little Albert would see the mouse, Watson would make this loud sound and back up the kid and scare the daylights out of him. Right? So where do you see this going? Yeah. He's terrified of the mouse. So, they were so excited excited that they have, had been able to do this, because no one had actually done this with a human before, because it was only Pavlov and the dogs, right? So, we know how little Albert was conditioned, but did you know that they never made him right? They never fixed him. And so they sent him home. And pretty soon his mother brought him back and said, I don't know, this kid is turning out really weird because now he's afraid of his stuffed animals, he's afraid of white sweaters, he's afraid of cotton, he's afraid of white blankets, he's afraid of anything soft and furry, he's afraid of the dog. So instead of them saying, oh, gosh, you gotta take care of this poor child, they said, I think that's another psychological principle. I think we'll call it generalization. So generalization is when your fear sort of spreads out. It snowballs. You start off being afraid of one thing, and then pretty soon you're afraid of anything that even, I'm going to say the word remind you, but you don't actually have to be reminded, not thinking. But anything that resembled the mouse in any way scared little Albert. Now, unfortunately, they again sent little Albert home, and nobody knows what happened. They lost track of him. They never put him back the way he was. They never helped him get over his fears. We don't know if he turned out to be a psychopath, or if he eventually did get over his fears, or if he was a successful person, or, they don't know. And because they don't know, there's like this mystique about little Albert. Like every once in a while in a scientific journal, somebody will have like a little Albert sighting, where they'll claim that they know like where he's buried, or they find a distant relative of his and find out that he grew up in, Germany after that, right? None of those things have been proven. So in other words, we don't know what happened to little Albert. Now, could we do this experiment today?
No.
Okay, so some people say yes, some no.
You could, but they probably wouldn't allow it. Because what happened to him?
Yeah.
You could, but
like in your basement, you mean?
Yeah.
Without telling anybody?
You can do a lot of things you shouldn't, but
exactly, yeah.
Legally do it.
And you know what? You probably could do it on TV, like those reality shows. But as a psychologist, no. You could never perform this experiment today, because now we have an ethics committee, and anytime you're going to do an experiment, you have to take your plans to the committee, and if they think that you might harm a person or an animal, they are not going to let you do that. So scientifically, no, we could never do this today. But on reality TV, they don't have an ethics committee. They can do, like Fear Factor, they can do whatever they want, right? Psychologists couldn't do that kind of stuff. Okay, so I don't want to, I do want to talk about, okay, but I don't want that again. I don't want to freak anybody out. Okay, so classical conditioning in everyday life. Couple of examples. One is emotional responses that you just, you can't seem to shake. For example, maybe you're the person who, you go into your dentist's office and your hands get clammy. And it's because you've made the association with maybe getting the, shots or something. Or drug use. Remember when we talked about that pulse of dopamine that comes out prior to using? That's classical conditioning. Not when you repeatedly That's not classical conditioning. Classical conditioning is when you get the craving or the high begins before you do the action. So drug use is really both classical conditioning and operant conditioning. I'll talk about on Thursday. In your book, what's the example they use for advertising?
Taylor Swift.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and did you notice that, like, you know, on the Got Milk ad, they have all different kinds of people because not everybody likes Taylor Swift, right? So sometimes you'll see an athlete, sometimes you'll see a movie star, sometimes it's a male, sometimes it's a female. Because what they're trying to do is they're trying to get everybody, you know, and trying to hook you into associating their product with somebody who is popular. And the idea is, you know, well, if I'm going to, you know, eat their product or use their product, and I'm going to conduct like that too. Right? Now, throughout this little talk today, I've been making a point of saying that no cognition is necessary, no thinking is necessary. Probably the very best example of that is the human immune system. Your immune system, you know, your T cells, just cells in the immune system, can be classically conditioned. And you know that they are not anticipating anything, right? They're not remembering anything. They're cells, right? They don't have that capacity. So we're going to talk about this in greater detail in chapter 10, and we're going to talk about Ader and Cohen, who are the two scientists who discovered this. So we'll leave that story for chapter 10. But for right now, I do want you to remember that classically conditioning the human immune system is proof positive that you don't have to have cognition. Okay? It can all be autonomic. So I think that's a very valid point. Okay, I want to talk about phobias. And I don't think that this is in the book, but it's something that I just think is very interesting and totally appropriate for classical conditioning. You know, there are some things that a lot of people are afraid of. Not phobic, not phobic, but just afraid of things like, you find a lot of people who are afraid of heights. This is a good thing. This is just a regular fear. You can't go all willy-nilly jumping off a cliff, right? Because you're not a baby. You can't fly. A lot of people are afraid of deep water, which is fine because you're not a fish. If you can't swim, you probably should be afraid of deep water. A lot of people are afraid of bugs or spiders or snakes or, you know, which is fine because those things really can hurt you, right? They bite, they sting, you know. They could kill you, they might be poisonous. So there's nothing wrong with that. But being afraid means that you have a fear. A fear is fine. And a fear can be gotten over if you want. Right? You know, they'll say face your fears. So maybe some of you are kind of students who are afraid to come to school. Especially like the older, the returning students. I mean, I've had moms who tell me much later in the semester that they actually came into the parking lot 4 times before the semester started because they were so afraid to even come into the building. Because you young punks, you see, you intimidate the older people. So they were afraid. They were literally afraid that they were going to embarrass themselves in front of a group of young people. Right? That you'd laugh at them. You know. So, that's a fear. That's a very reasonable fear to have. Right? Haven't been in school in 20 years and think, am I going to be able to do it? Okay. That's not a phobia. That's not what we're talking about here. A phobia is an irrational and maladaptive fear. A phobia is when you are out of control. Now, irrational means that there is no reason for it. It's one thing to be afraid of a snake. It's another thing to be afraid of a picture of a snake. You see where I'm going with this? It's maladaptive because very often phobias keep people from doing what they want to do or experiencing life the way they want to experience it. So suppose you're phobic about driving across a bridge and you get this wonderful job, but to get to your job you have to drive across the bridge. What are you going to do? Either have a huge panic attack every time you go to work, which is no good, or have to give up the job, which is really no good, right? So that's usually when people then come to therapy and go, Doc, you got to help me because, like, you know, this is really bad, and you know.
One of my best friends, I don't know what it is, but she always thinks I'm gonna get kidnapped. She has a phobia of being kidnapped, and or she thinks somebody's following her. She doesn't think that, but she's really cautious about it, you know. And one day, me and my friends pulled a prank on her. I don't know, my two friends. Well, no, but we didn't know she was gonna get so scared. We found car seats. We found car seats. And I was like, Bree, will you come to the bathroom with me? And when I was in the bathroom with her, they hid the car seats in her car. And she had a meltdown. When she went to leave, she's like, you guys, oh my God. She's like, there's car seats in my car. We were like, what do you mean there's car seats in my car? We went down this whole path. What if there's something in your trunk? What if did somebody take your car? Were they in there when you drove here? She called her mom. It was in tears. We were
oh, sassy girl.
No, we didn't know. Once she started crying, we were like, breathe, settle down. We put those in your car. Why would you ever act like that just because car seats are in your car? She really thought it freaked her out. And in my head, somebody could be following me home from here, and I'd be pulling in my driveway.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Usually we hear those kind of stories from your younger brother, right? He finds out what you're afraid of and he chases you with it.
Yeah.
You know, he knows that you're afraid of closed-in spaces, so he locks you in the closet.
Well, we didn't know that would scare her, you know, but she kind of reacted so crazily that we were like,
yeah,
we're gonna keep going with it.
Yes, yeah, because it's fun. Okay, who's got another phobia? I mean, who has a phobia?
What about learned, I was never scared of the dark, and I'm scared of the dark now because I think it's because I watch many scary movies and I come home from work really late.
But now let me ask you, are you just afraid of the dark or are you actually phobic about it? Can you convince
if I'm
yourself?
downstairs by myself and the lights are off, I freak out.
Okay, all right, then that's a phobia. If you freak out, okay, you can't talk, because you can't talk yourself out of a phobia. Remember, there's no cognition involved. So you can stop feeling bad about yourself, okay? It's not that you're a weak person. It's not that you don't have, it's not that you're not smart. It's not that there's anything wrong with you. It's just that you got wired up that way. And once the brain gets wired up that way, it's done. It's done. I'll show you how you can undo it. But remember we said relatively permanent? If you don't do something to unwire that phobia, it is going to be with you. And that's the end of that. So who's got a phobia in here?
I really need
Heights? Okay, I saw you react when I was talking about heights.
I can't.
I saw your anxiety level went up.
It freaks me out.
Yeah.
like, oh my god, I forget what I was doing. I was on vacation somewhere, and like, we were at like an amusement park, and like, I really don't like rides. So me and my mom would sit out, and then we saw this thing. It was like, you were strapped in it, and like you could walk, like, and it was like in the air. You could like walk on like ledges and stuff. And I was like, oh, that'll be fun. Like, okay. I almost peed my pants. I was so scared. I was like, I can't walk across here. Like, it freaks me out. And I was strapped, harnessed, and everything.
See, that's exactly right. Because in